Good morning. Good morning to everyone, and welcome to this last day of this retreat. So, as we have been doing, we'll spend the first few minutes settling our mind and body. Sitting in silent meditation, focusing on any chosen object that you are more familiar with or you are comfortable with, and try to stay with that object with full awareness to the extent possible, where you try not to just stay with the object but also stay with clarity, attention, and yes, imbued with some sense of delight and confidence, purpose in this kind of a meditation. When I speak of clarity, it is important to remember there are two aspects of them. Clarity of the object, trying to have a sense, clear sense, a clear feeling of it. And then the other one is from the subject side. Try to have a firm grip, not just barely being there with it, but also with some firm grip on it, firm hold on it. And whenever the mind tends to waver off, just whenever you recognize that, acknowledge that for what it is without overreading, underreading about it, but being merely realistically aware of it and be gentle to yourself and not making too much fuss over that. And then bring the mind gently to the object once again. in preparation for the recitation of the homage to Shakyamuni Buddha, let's take time in cultivating our merit field in whatever way you feel comfortable, you feel familiar with. It could be visualizing Shakyamuni Buddha in the space above oneself. Radiant and smiling face. Imbued with all the positive qualities that have reached full potential. And having eliminated all faults, all obscurations, all faults, totally, completely eliminating even the slightest potential for it to arise any more. You can even think of the lineage masters from the Buddha's time to the present, those who have been so kind in passing down the pure teaching, unbroken, those who have also practiced themselves and experienced them, have been kind enough to leave us with their legacies of writings, so crucial at this time. In unpacking the intents of the Buddha. Thinking of these lines, thinking along these lines, let's feel inspired by their inner qualities. Of varying degrees of progression, advancement, full awakening, full blossoming in the case of the Buddha. Also, let's generate gratitude for their kindness, care, and enlightened activities. Even to this day. Think of fellow sentient beings. Just try to relate to sentient beings as fellow sentient beings. Not someone outside of our category, but someone within the group, excluding none. Think of fellow sentient beings surrounding us for the convenience of including them and making them participate in the visualization and cultivations. Think of them all in human form, as well as for the purpose of creating a condition, at least from our part, of wishing, pushing, encouraging, for them to be born continuously as humans until they attain full awakening. Visualize them in human forms. Yet at the same time, being realistic in what their present conditions are and will be unless they follow the path of the Dharma. Think of them being under their own predicaments, limitations, constraints, sufferings, both mental, physical, environmental, etc. Thinking along these lines, connect with sentient beings on our very basic levels of commonality, generating a sense of affinity, of being in the same boat, of being the same type, of being one of ourselves. Then that affinity sense growing into a sense of empathy, reaching out to them and feeling what they are feeling, what they are going through, giving rise to a sense of concern, compassion, care, particularly thinking along lines of our connectedness, dependence. Since time immemorial, and we'll continue to be dependent on each other in the future. Even upon becoming Buddhas, we'll be as dependent on the sentient beings for all we would have achieved. No mention about our dependence in the meantime as well. Thinking along these lines, try to develop even a stronger sense of affinity, sense of gratitude, sense of appreciation, growing into genuine attitudes of compassion, wishing them to be free of all sufferings, generating loving kindness, wishing them to be adorned with all possible lasting happiness, so that they could eventually become fully awakened, like the Buddha has achieved and he has intended for all of us through his teachings and enlightened activities. With these attitudes in place, both those going to the merit fields as well as to our fellow sentient beings, let's say this homage to Shakyamuni Buddha with a felt sense of what the words convey.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one that's gone, the foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one not to bliss, nor the world's supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. True purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop into a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the four faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, o'erland, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy Gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niyatayami. I take refuge until I am awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Hold the attitude of bodhicitta within our mind that we have just generated, wishing to attain full awakening for the sake of all sentient beings. Someone has aptly said, when it comes to thinking big, there's nothing bigger than bodhicitta. It's the most noble, worthwhile, and wise thought or attitude. Try to think around this statement. Think about this statement, around this statement, in seeing the truth of it. And also bring to your mind how afflictions comes in the way, in all different forms, in all different stages of our journey to becoming fully awakened. How is it? How it is high time, imperative for us not only recognize that we have afflictions, also know their ways of working, their destructiveness, in and out. Thus, so that we become well versed in the workings, in the designs, in the trappings of the afflictions, so that we will no longer fall in that trap. Instead, be able to expose it, undermine it, weaken it, and eventually totally eliminate it. And that's the way to fulfill this aspiration of bodhicitta. By completely getting rid of this poisonous tree, like afflictions, of which even the subtlest trace of them, even when uprooted, even the subtlest trace of them can be detrimental, can be pricey, thus feel even more determined, of course imbued with a sense of hope, given that afflictions have a very unstable foundation in ignorance, in being totally against the reality. Thus it's just a matter of making efforts against it, that it will have no choice but to be brought down completely. Let's feel joy and delight in yet another session of, if you will, affliction bashing. With sound, logic, understanding, grounded in reality, with the force of wisdom. Let that be the motivation for this session. Okay, welcome. If you can open the slides from slide number 20, that would be helpful. I guess that's the right number. And before we have the slides, okay. Is this slide number 20? Okay, thank you. So, before we go into it, there are two questions here. I'll try to answer them quickly. Vishla, you said that attachment is not concomitant with anger. But when I have jealousy, it seems that I am both angry and attached. Would it be correct to say that in these instances I'm angry with the person and attached or craving their good fortune? Yeah, when we are talking of concomitance, we are talking of the reality of split-second happenings. Whereas when we look grossly, things may seem like simultaneous, but they may not be actually simultaneous. It's a matter of split-second moments, changes. So that's one way of looking at it. Another may be, as you are suggesting, that maybe what's happening. But this is very unlikely because you are saying that you're looking at two different objects. That would itself involve some time it lapses. So yeah, very often there are many cases of things appearing to be simultaneous, but actually they're not because of their fast-paced happenings. There's another question. Yeah, by the way, before I forget, I wanted to say something additional to the questions that we had yesterday about the resistance to facing afflictions and like that. There, it is very important to remember that we are not our afflictions. We cannot identify ourselves with our afflictions as much as they have been our all-time partner, in a way, all-time masters, to which we have been subservient all throughout. We have been kowtowing, believing in their dictates, totally trusting them, but all it has done is just let us down. So that's why there is this danger of identifying with it, because of its being almost a constant companion or constant master. But we have to realize that that's not the reality. We are not our afflictions, we are not our emotions and others, but let alone afflictions. The afflictions are something to be dealt with and gotten rid of, which is possible based on the falsehood on which the whole story, affliction story, is written. The whole affliction story is, however interesting and convincing they may look, is totally based on baloney. Big baloney. So the afflictions are nothing but balloons inflated with that baloney. Okay. So there's another question. Emotions like guilt, shame, or low self-esteem have not been mentioned yet. How do they relate to the afflictions we have discussed so far? They seem to be quite central in today's Western society, but are not often discussed in Buddhism. Might this be due to cultural and socio-historical differences and changes? No. Guilt, shame, low self-esteem, they are as universal as self-grasping is. From a Buddhist perspective, they may not be pointed out that clearly, but they all come in one packet called self-centeredness. And self-centeredness is even more tricky, even more, even more, of course, crafty, creepy, all of those, but I'm thinking of another word. Pardon? Yeah, devious and pretentious. Devious, pretentious, devious. When you say devious, what do you mean? Dubious or devious? Devious. Oh, okay, bad intention. But I'm looking for a term where it is kind of more like that it itself, well, self-centeredness, that part we can tackle. I have already planned of taking up self-centeredness and self-grasping next time. Yeah. So next time I will not repeat the previous slides as much, unless I needed to connect back and provide the context, but I'll deal with the two horny things, two demons within us: self-grasping and self-centeredness. Self-grasping, self-centeredness. How could they be demon-like? They are self-something, self-focused, self-grasping. Oh, it looks like self-upholding, self-caring, but they are as demon-like as anything can be. They are the most demon. So all of this guilt, shame, low self-esteem, they will all come under self-centeredness. They are different incarnations of self-centeredness. So yeah, and in the scriptures we speak of this particularly of low self-esteem, where even the methods, even where you feel really low, let down by yourself, kind of worthless, etc., etc., then in the scriptures it speaks of uplifting oneself, elevating oneself, uplifting oneself, picking oneself up by thinking of the good qualities you have. At the very least, you have Buddha nature. What could be even better than that? A big treasure is hidden under us, in us. So, and that too, not just is just a mere blind faith. We could really look into our qualities and say, yes, these are the qualities which are unmistakably the right, realistic things that we could point to as Buddha natures, and see how nurturing them, recognizing them in the first place, nurturing them and developing them can really make a big difference. So we will begin to see, yes, we indeed have that treasure all throughout. Just as that sutra that we quoted says, it is the devious methods employed by self-cherishing and self-grasping that has hidden that treasure from us so deep into that thicket of their thinking. And instead, they kind of pronounce themselves up front and make their ways kind of run the show. So yeah, they are central, and I think these are not necessarily connected with socio-historical, cultural context, but rather they are very universal. And yes, self-centeredness is to go to blame for all of this, for all of these disguises that it comes in. But self-centeredness is quite even more tricky. Yeah, it comes in even more difficult to detect. What do you call appearance? Yeah. So we'll tackle this next time, and I think for now, just pointing where to put the blame, where to look for in self-centeredness should be good enough. Yes.
Would you explaining linking the guilt, shame, low self-esteem to self-centeredness? Which one is the cause? Which is the result?
You mean among the three?
Yeah. So are they like the cause of the self-centeredness, or the self-centeredness is the cause of these things?
Self-centeredness is behind all of them. I wouldn't necessarily say cause per se, but it is behind them. It's the force behind them. It's the impetus behind them. Yeah. It's not that if you have self-centeredness, you necessarily have to have these. But when these come, it's self-centeredness that's behind them. It's behind them. It's a force behind them. Yes. Yeah. So we all seem to agree with that. Self-centeredness is something to really go back to, and if self-centeredness is something to really go back to and have a good talk with. So we have something to settle. Come sit at the table. Okay, so we'll touch on what we promised to touch. So here, cause is giving rise to afflictions. You can see in both of these texts, one is Abhidhammakosh and other is Abhidhammasamujja. By the two brothers. The authors are two brothers. Abhidhammakosh is Vasubandhu. Abhidhammasamujjaya is by Asanga. And they must have had discussion before they wrote this down, because it seems like almost repeating the same thing. Afflictions are not abandoned. If you have the condition that your afflictions are not yet abandoned, which means you have yet to abandon them, you carry this latency. When I use the term latency here, I'm using it in a broader sense, which includes both the seed as well as the subtle stains, even after seeds have been removed. Both those combined together are also referred to as latencies in the text. So this is in that context. It includes seed. So you have not eliminated the seed, let alone the subtle stains of the affliction, but not even the seed affliction. So you carry the seed with you. And then as we go by our life, we come across objects that could catch our attention. Yeah? Be that of its being attractive to us, unattractive to us, etc., etc. And then, not only we carry the seed within us and we are close to our objects, we provide the connection. I really like this, the third one. We provide the connection. If we don't provide that connection, we wouldn't be connected with it. So we may carry the seed with us, affliction seed, and the objects are here, but we project our sense of our evaluation, our assessment of them, and that's how through that connection we get the input, the feedback, whatever. Then we react. So it's so crucial at our samsaric level to take note of the third one, inappropriate attention. That's something where we have some control, even when we are thick in samsara. So what I'm saying here is, we are subject to generating afflictions so long as we carry the seed of affliction within us. And seed here should not be left to an abstract thing. We should think of it as the disposition of self-grasping within us, self-cherishing, self-grasping, more often, not just more often, more importantly, more so the case with self-grasping. We have so strong self-grasping in us. Self-grasping needs to be unpacked because the term is quite misleading, particularly in English, although it should be even in Tibetan also, except we have gotten so used to what it actually means, so that we are not kind of carried off the track by the mere mention of the name. But in English, when it is used, noble is a noble expression. There are ways of misunderstanding it, but we don't have time today to unpack it. We'll have the entire next retreat to do that. So self-cherishing, and what many of us may be thinking what self-cherishing is, yes, we may understand it is a misunderstanding, misreading, not just misreading, but completely diametrically opposite reading of the reality in terms of how things are utterly, thoroughly, through and through, subtly, through and through, just sheer dependent. But we tend to project some kind of a intrinsic self-enclosed identity in things. We may sometimes think that, oh, that's not what I do. I see everything as dependently related. But even within the dependent related itself, we project it in a self-enclosed form, dependent arising itself. So it's quite tricky. Yeah, we have gotten so tangled in it that it is not that easy to untangle ourselves. Yeah, just today I came across an expression where it says, unlimiting the mind. Afflictions limit our mind, constrains our mind. We need to unlimit the mind because it has unlimited potential. And then we have gotten so tangled up in our notion of selfhood that it is high time to untangle it, free the self from the entanglements we have set around it and trapped it. So we have the seed within us in this very obvious awareness, in this very obvious presence of this deeply entrenched self-grasping within us, to the point that we don't even sometimes see anything wrong with that. We kind of sometimes think that how the self-grasping projects things to be should be the way actually how things should be. Otherwise, how could Otherwise, we are so entrenched to that level, so tangled in that level. And the objects are around us. We cannot get rid of objects. We have to go about our business. And so we will bump into our objects of dislike, like, whatnot. Now, in a samsaric existence, what do we have power over? Is providing that connection or not. We can keep the connection from going there. So that's the inappropriate attention. Right? So the three are the causes of generating affliction within us. And when we are in samsara, the inappropriate attention is where we have more say. We cannot make excuses. That's where we have say. Actually, we need to know that we do not do that. Or if at all we want to give connections, provide a good connection, sound, healthy connection, then the feedback will be good. If you meet someone, don't always look from negative side. If you do, then how you read that person, it would be negative. The feedback would be negative. That's what I'm saying in a broad sense. If we are looking at everything from a glass half full perspective, then yes, we will get positive feedback from the things. So inappropriate attention, but we are still open to appropriate attention. So that's the connection we need to understand. And Abhidhamma Sammuccaya is saying the same thing. The latencies of afflictions are not abandoned. Objects serving as the basis of afflictions are there to be seen, to be observed, to be experienced. And the person generates inappropriate attention towards them. When these are present, afflictions cannot be stopped. It's just push their way through. That's very important to remember. And the third one, inappropriate attention, is something we need to look deeper and deeper so that we will begin to have more control over our afflictions. At least we wouldn't provide the air to inflate it. Okay, let's look at the next one. Yes, this is what we find in Lamrim, right? The 6 causes. And this has a source in yet another text by Asanga. Oh no. Oh yeah, Bodhisattva Bhumi, Asanga, by Asanga, where he expands on those 3 causes. You will see all the 3 previous ones in there. The first one is the basis, that is the proclivity or afflictions, that is the afflictions having been not abandoned. And then the object refers to the appearance of object conducive to the arising of an object, affliction, that's the object. And then if we look down the list, the last one is attention. It calls it attention, but it is incorrect attention, refers to incorrect attention, like it says that projects pleasantness, unpleasantness onto what has pleasantness, always inappropriate, in the sense we are also mistaken in what kind of a projection we are making things. So we see unpleasant ones, pleasant, impermanent things, permanent, etc., etc. Right? And then Bodhisattva Bhumi Asanga cares to present 3 more obvious causes. Social context. If you are around bad friends, so long as you are not strong enough, then it would be good to avoid bad friends. If you're strong enough, then you could even be motivated to go into bad friends, bad companies, and be a good influence on them. But not until then. It's not saying bad people are always bad to avoid it. No. It's in context, dependence on how strong you are. So that's the whole purpose of building your inner strength. Once you are built enough, then you come out into the society. Or you can stay until you become fully awakened and then come out. I mean, that's the only thing you want to do, and you have all out plan to do. And you can even do that in between as very strong bodhisattvas. Or at the very least, with whatever understandings, practice, experiences we have, we could then feel motivated by a sense of care and concern for others, and then share them. That's how we. So yet at the same time being very aware of our own attitudes, motivations, afflictions, mental states like that. Because to be of benefit to others, in a true sense, the first and foremost thing is to really build oneself strong. And that will ensure the actual benefit, and that too a benefit of a lasting nature. Otherwise, it could be a very temporary benefit. But when they see ourselves falling down, falling off of our values and principles, then that could be very detrimental. So sometimes people say, yeah, people talk about why just go in the monastery, come out and share. So it's a matter of how ready you feel, not in terms of what you can share, but in terms of how really ready in the inner strength wise, particularly one's own strength over afflictions, more particularly self-centeredness, selfishness, like that. And then the third is explanation. I mean, listening to wrong teachings, indoctrinations, or kind of being naive, submissive, servile object to propagandas, etc., etc. That is the reason why Buddha said, I mean, I think it is in Kalama Sutra, where if you look carefully, you will see a list built up on what not to believe in. And that will just about include everything. sayings, dictums, proverbs, etc., etc., because they are all contextual. And if we take them out of context and see them to be an absolute, outright truth, then they can sometimes fail us. Not blindly taking them, but rather investigate and think, see for oneself. And through that investigation, we'll begin to see, yes, this applies right in this kind of situation, but this is not true in this kind of situation. So we'll be able to kind of utilize our marvelous intellect and judgment in understanding it within the particular context, rather than be kind of very blindly, easily, naively carried away by them. Okay, that should do. We have to move on. Let's go 3-4 slides down. Down. Yes, finally we are here. Finally here. So earlier it was causes. Now this is dealing with the process, how afflictions gets activated or generated. This is the process. The earlier one was just the cause. What are the causes that can give rise to it? This is the process. So this is from the Prasangika Madhyamika point of view. It says it starts with the stimulus, internal or external, that is the object, and you detect it, followed by a perception or a mental notation of it. So you come across an object, or you bring up an object in your mind. That's when the mind would have an object to deal with. Up to that is mechanical. Up to that is nothing problematic with that. That's okay. Even for Buddhas also this happens. Now, then you look at that object and then see that not just appear, not just that thing appears as inherently existent, but you give into that kind of appearance and hold on to that as the truth. So that's from the Prasangika Madhyamika point of view. You grasp at an inherently existent object. You come across an object, you grasp at it not that it always happens whenever we encounter an object, but sometimes there are objects, sometimes that there are thoughts that are strong enough to kind of really make us or throw us into concretizing it. So we see them in in the light of being inherently existent. So you leave the step after that, you jump on to 2 steps after that, you come down to inappropriate attention. Right? So you leave 2 steps below that, which is grasping at self-sufficiently substantial self, or grasping at an independent, permanent, monolithic self. You leave them out. You could jump to inappropriate attention. That's one way of generating affliction. So inappropriate attention here would be, in the case of anger and attachment, you will be projecting, you will be not only holding on to an inherently existent object, but now you are projecting pleasantness or unpleasantness, attractiveness, unattractiveness to that object, and see that also through this lens of inherently existent. So earlier it was seeing or grasping the object as inherently existent. Now you are projecting, superimposing attractiveness on it, and seeing the attractiveness too in the light of being, or through the lens of being inherently existent, or in unattractiveness also in the light of being inherently existent. And that will then give rise to either anger, attachment, and other afflictions. So the inappropriate attention here is these ways of projecting as pleasantness, unpleasantness. Of course, inappropriate in that you see them to be inherently existent pleasantness, inherently existent unattractiveness, something like that. Right? That's the inappropriate attention. Inappropriate attention in the list earlier in Bodhisattva Bhumi, where we saw within inappropriate attention included even projection of permanence on impermanent things, projection of pleasantness on unpleasant things, whatnot, right? So pleasantness on unpleasant things, or even on pleasant things, we project an inherently existent pleasantness. Even on relatively unpleasant situations, whatnot, you, at least to yours, in your context, but you see that in the light of being inherently so, not being a temporarily, contingently built situation, but rather existing in and of itself, right? But then the projection of permanence, selfhood, those are usually not included in the inappropriate attention. There it was included because it was kind of, if you will, a broad brush, kind of a broad statement, which could be then adjusted in different situations. But in this context, inappropriate attention leaves out projecting any kind of other ways of falsehood, false selfhoods. We leave them out. So is that clear? What I meant is, we came to the 3rd step and then leave the next 2 steps and then do inappropriate attention. There it would be inappropriate attention like that of seeing attractiveness on something that is unattractive, or seeing unattractiveness on something that is attractive, or something that is attractive and you see that as attractive, unattractive as unattractive, but nonetheless still mistaken in that you see them in the light of being inherently so. Yes.
But it's important that we're grasping at an inherently existent I who's grasping at these inherently existent things as pleasant or unpleasant. So number 3 is crucial, right? The self-sufficient.
Number 3 is crucial in any situation. Yeah.
Okay, the next 2 are different ways in which we perceive ourselves, but inherently existent is the fundamental.
It is always present there. Yeah, it is always present. Okay. And then remember, I include grasping at inherently existent I, my, mine, and also phenomena. So in the Prasangika perspective, self-grasping, the selfhood, the self there has nothing to do, not necessarily have to do with person. Yeah, it has to do with the identity, mistaken identity, right? Self as in selfhood or self as in self-identity. Yeah. So that's why I included phenomena. Doesn't necessarily always have to be I. Yeah. So you could be seeing the object as being inherent existence, you could be seeing yourself as inherent existence, your possession. Actually, in the case of my and mine, it is not so much the object, it's the connection. It is mine, the relationship is what you're grasping at inherent existence. Yes. Yeah.
So we can skip over points 4 and 5 because 5, grasping at an independent permanent self, is learnt and it's not always there. And then the other
Which
one? No, the independent permanent monolithic self.
Uh,
And then the one above, we can eradicate that before we eradicate grasping at inherent existence. That's why we can skip over those two.
no, not quite. Not quite. Yeah, not quite. Partly right, partly not quite how I'm thinking. I'm coming there, right? So that's one way. Skipping the steps 4 and 5, and we generate anger, attachment, whatever. That would be an affliction only discovered, you feel, or identified by the Prasangika Madhyamikas, completely skipped over by all the other tenet systems within Buddhism. They don't even see that as an affliction at all. They don't see that process of affliction happening at all, because they don't see self-grasping in the. They do not see inherently existent as any problem in the first place, and let alone that generating affliction. So they skip that whole layer under, what do you call, underground layer of afflictions. So when they speak of afflictions, they only speak of afflictions in terms of first 2 steps, jumping to the 3rd one, 4th one, and one could skip the 5th one and then come down to that. So now, right? Pardon? Now we're going to skip them. Yes. Now we will try to skip them. We will try, but yeah. So in the case of the, so let's put it like this: in the case of non-prasangika Buddhist tenet holders, whenever we generate affliction, the always happening process is first and 2nd step, and then the 4th step, and then not necessarily the 5th, but 6th step onward. Right? That's clear, at least. So you come across an object, you see that, and then if it is going to generate affliction, that would be when you first grasp at a self-sufficiently substantial self. So there, when we speak of self-sufficiently substantial self, we are speaking of a mistaken notion of the self in relation to its aggregates. Not too wayward as to see self as being permanent while the aggregates are impermanent, seeing the self as independent while the aggregates are dependent, self as monolithic, whereas the aggregates are with parts. Not to that waywardness, not to that, what do you call, not what, pardon? Yeah, not to that extreme, not to that extreme. But seeing self nonetheless being something above, over and above the afflictions, aggregates, in that it is like a controller, others are like its subservience. And it's being seen in that light has to particularly do with how self has some kind of a self-sufficiency, substantiality about it, in that its identification is not dependent on identifying the aggregates. That's specific criteria for that. But how do we extend it to all other phenomena? Because you will as well be trapped in afflictions in relation to other objects also, and doesn't necessarily always have to go through self per se. Although they have a point in saying seeing self in that mistaken light is all that is responsible for generating affliction, and explaining this selfhood only in relation to a self as a person, by saying that everything you relate to, you do that through you, right? Unless you put yourself in the picture, there is no such thing as I'm now angry with this thing. You always run things through you. It has to come through you, and that's how it's almost like your world is your own creation. It's not that somebody else's world is you are partaking in, because you relate to the world through your interaction with it. Outside of that, the world may exist or not exist, it doesn't matter. So that's what pushed them, or in reality may be the case, how we see ourselves in the first place in relation to our immediate aggregates affects in relating to other objects outside of us, including things within us. And in terms of extending this wrong perception to all existence, to all phenomena, they do so by saying, not only you see yourself in this mistaken notion of an unfounded vantage point, unfounded advantage over the aggregates, but you see everything as being, as what do you call, an object of experience of that selfhood. That's how that wrong notion of selfhood gets extended to all things, not by way of seeing everything is that wrong self, but everything is the object of engagement of that self, wrong self. So that's how we can still talk of, at this level, we can still talk of how everything, not just person is selfless, but everything is selfless. The person is selfless in that the person is not in that nature, in the nature of a self-sufficient, substantial self, but all the rest of the phenomena are also selfless in that they are not the object of engagement by such a mistaken self. Pardon? They aren't. They aren't, but we project them to be. And that's how we see them in that mistaken light. So that's how we can speak of everything, every phenomena being selfless, even at this grosser level. And why I'm caring to speak about this is because we can make sense at this level of how we can generate anger, jealousy, greed, etc., or all other mental delusions, delusory states in relation to ourselves, grounded on this mistaken notion of who we are in relation to our aggregates. But also we can also generate such afflictions in regard to all the phenomena around us, by seeing them through this lens of being, through this what do you call, mistaken lens of them being the object of engagement by such a mistaken, what do you call, such a false notion of self.
From the list that you have, the first one is an object. The second one is the omnipresent mental factors. The rest of them are afflictions, and the last one is the karma.
Yeah, you can say that. But the second one can have the omnipresent ones, but more than that. It could have more than that, because we talked about the 5 object ascertaining mental factors.
So the 5 and 5 in there, and then the
not
rest.
Totally 5. Of the second one, since they are not omnipresent, some could be present, some not.
Okay. But the rest of them are afflictions. Starting from grasping at inherent existence, everybody
Yes.
is an affliction
Yeah.
until the last one is the karma.
Yes, yes, except in the case of the third one, it is an affliction, but affliction not colored as such, as anger, jealousy, greed.
A neutral one.
Yeah, but the neutral one in its being as self-grasping.
Yes. Inappropriate attention is an affliction as well, right?
Inappropriate attention, yeah, of course it is. That's a very interesting point you brought up. In that it is still grasping at inherent existence. In the Prasangika Madhyamika, some shift happens with regard to the nature of afflictions. In all the lower schools, they may say every affliction, everything that is affliction or klesha is necessarily mental factor. But in the Prasangika Madhyamika, what is very clear is ignorance. Ignorance comes out of this package of being mental factor and becomes can come even in mind form, in my mental factor and mind form. In other words, self-grasping itself is a ignorance. Self-grasping itself is a afflicted affliction. Well, we don't need to go into that technical details. It will be only confusing unless people ask questions. Then I can address. Yeah. So yes, it is interesting how she looked at it. The first one is object. The second one is neutral, kind of a non-afflicted perception. The third one, from the third one becomes affliction. Although the third one is an uncolored, unflavored, uncolored, self-grasping affliction. And from the fourth one, not fourth, fifth, we skip, sixth one, then it gets color. Colored as pleasant, colored as unpleasant, colored as hostile, etc., etc. Yeah, right? And then anger or jealousy actually happens after that, after inappropriate attention. Then the karma. Now we were earlier talking of this other step. So from the non-prasangika madhyamikas, they will skip the third one. They don't see the third one even happening. Although from the prasangika madhyamika, it is happening there, except it doesn't catch their attention. Yeah, they gloss over it. So what they jump to, what they recognize is the fourth one. Right? The fourth one. So it's grasping at self, or self-grasping as they understand at the best. Right? Self-grasping as they understand. And then inappropriate attention, and the rest is same. Now, in the case of the prasangika madhyamikas, as well as in the case of the non-prasangika tenet systems, there could be an additional step. There could be an additional step in this process where it will be the first, second, leave out the third, because we are talking of non-prasangika. Then the fourth one comes, and then you could even add, on the basis of self being self-sufficient, substantial, you could even add one more layer in seeing it as even grosser than that, as being permanent, independent, partless. And that can serve as a brewing ground for then seeing attractiveness, unattractiveness in that much more grosser level. And that will generate the affliction. But that's not always the case in the understanding of the non-prasangika madhyamikas. Is this somewhat clear? Now, so we have seen that in the case of the prasangika madhyamikas, there are three ways of generating anger or jealousy, anger or attachment. Let's just stick with anger and attachment. The first, in the case of prasangika madhyamika, the first three steps, and it could also, there are three scenarios of generating anger. One would be first three steps, next two steps you skip, and sixth, seventh. It will be consistent, comprised of 1, 2, 3, just 4 and 5 until we generate anger. That's clear. Now another scenario is we could come through the first 3, add the 4th one on top of seeing. So on top of seeing something being inherently existent, you also see them to be self-sufficiently substantial. And then that could give rise to inappropriate attention, where you will be projecting present attractiveness or unattractiveness, but in the light of being not just inherently existent, but topped it up with this self-sufficiently substantial, either self or an object of engagement of such a self. And then inappropriate attention. But there could be a third scenario also, where the process is longer, where you have all the steps, including the fifth one. I think that should be good enough topic to think over. Yes. Yeah, I understand that.
Does the proliferation of the Nam-tok falls under the Prasangika view?
Yeah, when you speak of Nam-tok, it will be mostly the inappropriate attention. Yeah, as opposed to the self-grasping, as opposed to the self-grasping, apart from the self-grasping, when you speak of a Nam-tok Marik Champute, then the inappropriate attention is where Nam-tok is explained. I think Kengru, you have a question.
Shida Mantra view, is it also under inappropriate attention, or is it under the mental notation?
No. It is always in the inappropriate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Geshe-la, it happens too fast that when I encounter a stimuli, and then straight away I jump into emotion or even like behavioral action.
Yeah.
So in a layman way, where shall we actually deconstruct this in the analytical meditation? Should we actually start from number 1, or should we actually start from number 8 and examine back?
Yeah, that's very clearly laid out in the Buddha's teaching, where he starts with Shila. So when we are not capable of really coming from the causal part, then we start from outside in. You, as a means of curbing the afflictions, you should first discipline your physical and verbal actions as a way of what do you call, as a way of as a way of damage control, as a way of damage control. Of course, damage control, because most of the damage happens there. Actually, to the outside world, the damage control happens outside of you. It will already damage you already. That cannot be controlled from that. But I was saying, not giving vent to the afflictions. That's a way of constraining it. Although not directly, but indirectly, you're not giving vent to them. Giving vent, not giving vent to them, not giving expression to them. That's how it's constraining. You discipline from outside in. And then you develop concentration. Concentration, though it is not affecting the afflictions directly, but it has a very strong impact on the affliction. Not just on the manifest affliction, even on the seeds of them. Concentration practice. And then you top it up with the wisdom. Then yes, it comes face to face with the affliction and undercut it. Yeah, that was a wonderful question. Yeah, it is very important to think of the ways of dealing with it given where one stands. But ultimately, it has to really touch the afflictions themselves. Okay, I think this should be good enough to think about and bring up again and again, saying, "Oh, you said there's a contradiction." Okay, that would be wonderful to think of it. Now I want to move on to next several next to that. Oh yeah, I was thinking of one way of dealing with the in light of antidote to the afflictions. One general general way, pervasive way of dealing with the afflictions is cultivating equanimity. We can deal with the afflictions one-to-one by coming up with their own respective positive attitudes to deal with them, or we could deal with them in a sweeping way. The sweeping stroke will be by dealing with the self-grasping. One-to-one way will be by dealing with the afflictions by generating their own corresponding positive attitudes. But generating positive attitudes without resorting to wisdom of understanding selflessness, it can be a more pervasive way of dealing, more sweeping way of dealing with the afflictions, and that is by cultivating equanimity. Equanimity goes a long way, because equanimity is the reason, is not the reason. The lack of equanimity is the reason why we have this, uneven surface, uneven mental surface of being biased, being attached to some, repelled by some. Yeah, we are repelled by some, we are attracted to some, drawn to some, and based on that, the decisions we make become uneven. So there's need of leveling the ground. And when we do that, it will affect indirectly many afflictions. So not all of the afflictions exhaustively, all of the afflictions sweepingly, like self-understanding wisdom of understanding selflessness we would do, but it will still be addressing, not in an eliminating way, but undermining, mitigating, weakening way. It will deal with several afflictions at the same time. So that's why cultivating equanimity is so important in Buddhism. Actually, very important in the case of Bodhisattvas in their effort to generate universal love and compassion and bodhicitta. For that to happen and succeed, there's this need of doing this preliminary preparation of leveling the ground by cultivating equanimity. But even for Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas and whoever wants to generate universal love and compassion, no matter how motivated it is in really shouldering the responsibility or not, if it wants to kind of develop universal love and compassion, or in other words, if you want to really deal with these afflictions of attachment and anger, this unleveled, uneven way of dealing with sentient beings, which not only affects sentient beings adversely, but even ourselves adversely, that can be a big stumbling block on our spiritual growth. So towards that end, cultivating equanimity is very crucial. That's why we have the 4 immeasurables, of which when it comes to practicing them, we first train in immeasurable equanimity first, followed by either loving kindness or compassion, and then joy, whichever order. But within that, there is this order of who do you train with, what object you want to have. So in general, equanimity is an evenness of mind that enables us to be impartial without being swayed between attachment and anger, or attachment or hatred. And mainly those are the two, because out of all the afflictions, just as we have seen, they are subsumed into the 10 root afflictions. They can further be subsumed into the three root afflictions, 3 root poisons, after which for now we keep ignorance at bay, because it is all pervasive. Because if you talk of ignorance, that's what every afflictions can be subsumed to singly, right? But apart from that, before that, they could all be seen as being, in its very manifest form, seen being subsumed under attachment in the category, in the category of attachment and anger. So those are the two main reasons why they are more like kind of on the basis of ignorance. Those are more like the bumps or the dents that develop on that surface, and that's what we need to deal with before thinking of uprooting it. That's why equanimity in this, in both the cases of equanimity that I'm going to present, in both of them, the main target is the tendency of being being too drawn to some, too repelled by some, namely being too attached to some and too hostile to some. So that's the reason why equanimity is an antidote to that, in its being an evenness of mind that enables us to be impartial. Impartial not just for the sake of others, for our own sake also. We suffer from our, our succumbing to these afflictions. And so that's important to see the value of it, not just from others' side, without being swayed between attachment and hatred. So if I were to make a case for the need of it, first will be, in its absence, our mind will be prone to strong attachment and strong hatred. So we'll kind of be subjected to this swing, right? And sometimes, and even if they are of small nature, if we keep them, they have this potential to grow stronger, and thus kind of really jolt us from one extreme to the other. In its absence, we will have difficulty generating compassion. Suppose you have seen the benefits of compassion, then in efforts to generate it, this is the first obstacle, the anger and hatred. Anger and hatred on the one hand, attachment on the other hand, is the main obstacle to deal with. And the way of preparing for that is training in equanimity. And in its absence, even if we try to generate a compassion, the compassion will be partial and biased. That's what we usually speak of, ordinary compassion. It goes to some, do not go to others. It's selective. That's because it has that uneven ground. So you have a ground like this, and you build a house. Naturally, if they are equally 5-story ones, this will be higher, this will be lower. That's how a compassion becomes. So, and it is absence, compassion will not be stable. Again, the ground reality shifts. So, due to tremors and earthquake, they move like this and move like this. Then the compassion structure on top of it also moves like this, unstable. Sometimes it will be already gone. So those are the reasons why. So now let's look at the next one. Yeah. So I speak of equanimity. I mean, we all are aware of it. It's just a matter of naming it. I call one equanimity of impartiality, the other the equanimity of benevolence. So the equanimity of benevolence is the one that comes in the context of training in equalizing and exchanging self and others. And this one comes in the context, from a bodhisattva practice point of view, in the context of training in bodhicitta through the 7-point instruction, yes. So why, how do we cultivate it? Say, all of these cultivations are analytical in nature. Again, as I suggested, analytical meditations would be effective and successful when we're able to do it well on a stable ground of concentration. So you may want to begin with observing the breath and settling the mind, and then going through these steps, not necessarily in the same order, but see how it works for you. You can add things from your own experience of what makes the case for this, and that would be the way to put it. This is just a suggestion. Thinking that our categorization of people into enemy, friend, neutral is unstable. It keeps changing. Even in just one life, you switch from friendship to hard enemies and to hard, inseparable friends and neutral ones. We keep on changing. So using that as a reason to be selective in our treatment of others is unstable, is unreliable. in view of the changeability of relationships, discriminating people on the basis of these categories is unstable, unsuitable. First, our categorization itself is unstable, and on the basis of it, if we kind of decide to treat others differently or discriminate people on that basis, that is even unsuitable. The third is, in view of the common aspiration that we all share, that of wanting happiness, not wanting suffering, I think we can even bring that there here also. Cultivating a sense of impartiality towards all of them is more realistic and sensible. Right? Why be discriminatory when in reality everyone is same in this common aspiration that we share with each other? And then if we take rebirth into consideration, then there is no one who has not been near and dear ones to us. In one given life, we can maybe say, or someone that I've never met, I will never meet, that could be a neutral one, someone that I would have nothing to do with, how would they affect me adversely or favorably so? Or some would be someone that you are just kind of karmically connected with, just karmically bound with. You have no choice but to bump into him or her or that situation all the day, every day, right? And like that. But we take rebirth into consideration, allowing that we have been born from time immemorial and keep on doing so until we break through this bondage, until we break through this vault of samsara. And so far we have been going up and down, but only bumping against the walls, right? And not getting out of the vault. But if we can break that vault, then maybe we will stop from at least karmically born. Otherwise, we have to, and thus we keep having relationships with people of benevolence, etc. So there is no one we can say has never benefited me. And if the reason of someone having hurt you is reason to be angry, hostile to them, then we would have to be hostile to everyone, because at one point or the other, everyone would have harmed us. And then contemplating the faults of attachment, hostility, apathy, help us to release those emotions, right? We do not have to justify such treatment and let ourselves suffer from these emotions. Instead, generating an emotional balance in the form of equanimity is important. The last one is, even enemies, even someone who has harmed you cannot be a real reason to be hostile to them, because if it's only our lack of relating with them in that situation that has affected us adversely. Otherwise, they are at their own expense presenting a very precious, rare opportunity for us to really, really immensely benefit from them. This is such an eye-opening thing to the possibility. So enemies provide us with the opportunity to test our inner strength and to help us. They really get it when it comes to pointing our soft spots, vulnerable spots. Enemies get it. Friends may get it wrong, but enemies get it. They really point you, oh, this is an area I need to work on. They really get it. Yeah, in that respect, they are really precious and rare. Right? And they do that at their own expense. When they are angry, they are not feeling good. And it's not predictable what would entail for them. Right? So it's like they kind of deliberately, voluntary, pardon? Yeah, help us progress on the path in a very, very significant way. In particular for the Bodhisattvas, patience is something that sustains their practice of all 6 parameters. And that's provided, tested, provided, rechecked, make sure it grows by all this, by enemies, none other but enemies. Okay, let's interestingly look for the next one in 2 minutes. Okay, please.
In the third one, when you say in the view of the common aspirations that we all share, is that we all want to be happy and all want to avoid suffering?
Yeah, but not just that. Think of any other ways by which we could connect with them. Like we share in our worries, we share in our hopes, we share in our expectations, our fears, like that. Anything that connects us with them and bring them kind of close to us. But definitely that basic aspiration. Yes.
So, Geshe-la, I think besides cultivating the four immeasurables, it's very helped me to develop equanimity. But I think since I've been practicing the four foundation of mindfulness, when I contemplate the body, feeling, mind, and phenomena internally and externally, it helped me to see that I and others have a lot of in common.
Yes.
And that is so powerful.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, we all subject to aging, sickness, and death. And we are also attached to sense pleasure, craving for sense pleasure. So it's so amazing.
Yes. There's nothing special of me. Nothing different of me. We just have the same base. Right? We are in the same we are in the same boat.
We all breathe, we all eat, drink, we all
exactly.
Do that for physical posture. And
that's wonderful that you brought up breathing. Breathing is something, sometimes I even think it's even more fundamental than any other commonalities that we share. And in the case of breathing, at least in the scriptures, it says we start with breathing in. Right? We don't say you come out of the womb and say you kind of maybe at least of the out breath and in breath. You will start with in breath and out breath. But when we die, we end with out breath. And in that is we are all same. So kind of our meditation on breathing also should remind us, just as Venerable always reminds us, saying, think of the breathing and also think of its impermanence, of how it's constantly changing. Plus we breathe in, breathe out. That's how we start our life and end our life. And there, no one is exception. We are all same. It's such a fundamental thing in sustaining our life. So there are ample of reasons to connect with our sensibility. Okay, if you will bear with me, one more slide. Yes, I love this so much. So for many of us, this is familiar one. The Venerable taught us several sessions. So cultivating equanimity or benevolence. Here we call it benevolence because here the aim is not only to keep ourselves from being too attracted or too hostile to others, but in the wake of seeing this similarity, then you develop this sense of benevolence, of caring to benefit others, not harm others, right? But even a positive attitude to benefit others. So you consider, you think from the other sides. Others are all equal in terms of others, aside from you. In terms of others, they are all equal in wanting happiness, not wanting suffering. So you have to take time in really thinking through this and see the truth of it. Can you single out someone who really may be wanting suffering, not happiness, right? And then the second one is drawing on the first one, drawing on the first half of the first line. We are equal in wanting happiness, but we are also equal in being bereft of happiness, though we may want to have it. So in that respect, we are equal. And then the third one is taking on the second half of the first line. We are equal in not wanting suffering, but we are also equal in being constantly tormented by suffering of one kind or the other. It's so powerful, right? It's the truth. Now this is considering from others' side. Now you consider it from your side. On your side also, you have no reason to be discriminatory. You have no reason to wish anyone suffering, anyone less happiness. On your part also, because you have been benefited, or I have been benefited by all sentient beings without exception. Even when we think of just this life, irrespective of whether we know or not, If we really connect the dots, if we are helped by some one person, then indirectly their parents, their families, their teachers have helped us. If we learn from someone, we say, I have learned it from someone, but who that person may have learned from, where that person may have gotten it from. It could be from his writing, his hearing, sharing, and that may go way back in time, right? So both vertically, linearly, and horizontally. And then said, even when they are hostile to me, and I could benefit from them, they are still open to benefiting me. Not maybe willingly, but the way they project themselves in many cases in suffering situations, they pose themselves in such a way that we could benefit immensely from them. And then we are all same in being anitya, as anitya, dukkha, shyam, shunya, atman, anatman, right? I'm using Sanskrit term here so that it will fit in one line. Okay, so anitya is impermanent. We are all the same as impermanent in the nature of dukkha, in being empty of any inherent existence, in being lack of any kind of a self-sufficient selfhood. If that is the case, why should I discriminate among them? In this regard, Shantideva's text has this very pointed statement saying, "Vida sushi mitala." We are all impermanent. Who is more worthy of love and who is less worthy of it? And so goes with all the four qualities. So by contemplating this way, you again generate this determination that none is worthy of any impartiality and impartial treatment. Instead, all are worthy of being cared for. And then the last three is, if there is anyone truly worth hating, if there's someone who is really, really worth hating, or right, worth being hostile to, then someone with full awakening, omniscient mind like Buddha should detect it. But in the eyes of the Buddha, no one is enemy. If at all anything is enemy, it is their afflictions. So in this regard, it is so important to recognize that yes, we can do away with our sense of animosity with any being, but not with the afflictions. Neither the afflictions in them or in ourselves. But then the way to deal with the afflictions by seeing them as enemy is not by being hostile to them, not by giving into hatred or whatnot, but by using the antidotal methods led by wisdom, understanding, emptiness, right? But it is not to say that there are no friends, no enemies, no neutral beings in the conventional sense. There are, but such categories are not fixed, not permanent, and not ultimate. They keep changing shape, and they thus are not worthy of kind of being held on to and dole out these uneven treatments. And then the last one draws from the ultimate perspective. Ultimately, everything is dependently related. Everything is existing through mere contingents. Everything is being held by a delicate balance of contingent things together. Other than that, there's not even identity possible. On the basis of that bare, delicate contingency, which provides for their distinctness and provides for their distinct functions and operationality, the whole world system works like that. But what is underneath it, what is the actual structure of it, is just barely, delicately holding on to different configurations. Okay, so on that basis, there is no reason to be doling out uneven treatment Yeah, this is such a powerful practice, so powerful. But one has to kind of really take time in contemplating it. I do that in my daily Lamachupa practice. When this statement comes, this particular statement comes, I take time in going through this and contemplating. Okay, I think we are past the time limit. I think it has been a wonderful opportunity to share the Dharma. Okay. I think, yeah, we have run out of time. Yeah, okay.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of wholesome teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niyatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.